paper today, but as Daman said earlier, I'm going to try to be engaging as I do that. So this is actually an interesting follow-up to Hansjit's presentation, which was very interesting. Thank you. I think you'll see the links. So first, let me just ask, has anyone here had a chance to go to either Varaste Khalsa, the museum in Anandpur Sahib? Yes? Okay, great. Oh, that's a lot of people. Okay. And the other site that I want to ask about is Gobindgarh Fort, which is more recently opened in Amritsar. Yes? Yeah, okay, a couple people have been. That's great. So this is, what I'm presenting today is coming from one chapter of my dissertation, which broadly speaking is about audiovisual media that's used for religious and historical purposes within the Sikh community. And within this chapter, I'm looking at 3 different audiovisual museums. One of them is Viraste Khalsa, and one of them is Gobindgarh Fort, and I'm also looking at the digital museum at Darbar Sahib. If you know, maybe some of you have been there as well. That was recently opened. Today, I'm just going to focus on Gobindgarh Fort for time constraints. So I'm going to start with a simple question. What is actually on view at Viraste Khalsa or Gobindgarh Fort in Amritsar? Of course, the answer is Sikh history, but Sikh history for whom, by whom, and in what manner? What I'm exploring in this dissertation chapter is how these touristic heritage sites with rich high-tech audiovisual content indicate blurred boundaries between recognition of sacred, historical, and audiovisual. One could say that in the, oh, and also I should apologize because I made some very simple animations for this PowerPoint, but I made them in Keynote, and then when I transferred them into PowerPoint, they kind of got messed up, so. Anyway, before this it was supposed to say meaty and beady, so I'll talk about that and then this will make sense in just a second. So one could say that within the Sikh tradition, while scriptural and spiritual knowledge is paramount, it must be supplemented by wisdom of the community and knowledge of its history. Remembering Guru Gobind Singh's terse 28th Hukamnama, Rajniti Parni, study politics, we can understand this enjoyment of the Guru via the concept of meaty and beady. Symbolized by 2 dual swords in the Khanda emblem, meaty refers to Amir, wealth, and beady to the Pir Baba, suggesting the spiritual, which suggests an irreconcilable linkage between the material world and the spiritual world. Meaty refers not only to simple material wealth, for which the right-minded person, a Gurmukh, would be thankful and worshipful, but also to the material in the historical sense, suggesting a spiritual rationale for the otherwise simple order to study politics, Rajniti Parni. The fit of these concepts emphasizes how, while multimedia tourist sites serve many purposes, including economic, the act of mediating and representing a Sikh history is equally to be understood as fulfilling a kind of spiritual mandate. If in the Sikh tradition the divine is both fully transcendent and fully immanent, then the reconciliation of transcendence and immanence, as well as the opposition and synthesis of latency and overtness that governs audiovisual form, is at the heart of any audiovisual project in the 21st century Sikh tradition. Unlike traditional art museums understood to be black and white boxes whose contents can be exchanged or shuffled according to exhibitions on view and new pieces recontextualized with others, these touristic sites, these touristic audiovisual spectacles of Sikh heritage are designed from the ground up to direct the audience's attention and pathway through a fully engaged audiovisual experience. Such experience does not isolate itself to particular moments of techno-media splendor, but rather come through particular activations of media forms and by architectural settings. A sense of the pilgrim tourist's ambient visual attention is the item for critical curatorial scrutiny instead of particular details of individual items manufactured by particular artists. I don't know what that weird effect is that is doing. Okay, so Gobindgarh Fort is a historical site associated with Maharaja Ranjit Singh's rule of the Sikh Empire and was opened with new high-tech media tourist attractions in February 2017. In February 2017, after never having been opened to the public as a museum before. According to one Hindustan Times article from December 12, 2016, director and producer Deepa Sahi, involved in the park's development, said, "History will pour out of every brick of Gobindgarh Fort as the region's first virtual reality theme park." The current attractions include 3 cornerstone visitor experiences, and more development is still underway. The current main attractions are Sher Punjab, a so-called 7D or seven-dimensional show, Gandham Boldiani, Whispering Walls, or that's how it's translated as Whispering Walls, which is an intricate work of site-specific projection mapping where the facade of the fort becomes a screen for an after-dark show about the history of Amritsar and the fort itself, narrated from the first-person perspective of the building, and a live show consisting of Bhangra, Gidda, and Gatka. Excuse me. There is also a more traditional exhibit space in the interior of the fort, which features wax sculptures of various soldiers and common personages who would have worked in or occupied the fort at some point. Here I'll be focusing primarily on the audiovisual and architectural aspects of Sher Punjab, the 7D show, and Gandham Boldiani, the site-specific projection. There's also another smaller site that I really wanted to find a picture of, and I can't believe that I didn't take a picture of this, but there is a VR headset very much like the one Hansjeet just demoed for us, where they advertise that you can fly like a baz. And I think it's really interesting because a baz, of course, is the bird that's iconically associated with Guru Gobind Singh, and otherwise there's no connection to anything related to Sikh history or heritage at all, but instead of it being another kind of bird, they just call it a baz, so that magically it has some connection to Sikh heritage. So in the back corner of the armament wall of the Gobindgarh Fort complex, a space has been carved out into a small specialized movie theater for showing primarily a 7D computer-animated short film about the life and times of Maharaja Ranjit Singh and his rule over the Sikh Empire in the late 18th century. This 15-minute work of animation and expanded sensory stimulation is action-packed and heroic, if textbook, and it recounts Maharaja Ranjit Singh's life and his rise to power. Beginning with his childhood, his father's death, the story turns to his ascendancy and leadership of his missile, and subsequently corroborating the power of all the independent Sikh missiles into the centralized authority of the empire. True to South Asian cinematic form, the work is peppered with musical numbers, notably one rousing panegyric song about Maharaja Ranjit Singh's valor and ability to fight off the British on one frontier and the Afghans on the other. This musical number is also notable for its references to Punjabi folk music, using algoze, the twin pipe flute, and sung in a style resembling the Dadi Jatha, bardic poetry. Cinematic shows featuring multiple dimensions, quote unquote multiple dimensions, are a common feature, beyond three-dimensional, are a common feature of expanded media apparatuses in touristic spaces such as theme parks in the United States. And, oh, here we go, okay. And these are the so-called dimensions, the 7 dimensions that make up the 7D show. So we have 3D glasses, hydraulic-powered moving seats, water jets that spritz you in the face, fake snow, a short whip-like device that hits you in the feet, and often goes along with certain kinds of like noises or images, like for example the galloping of a horse. So I don't know why getting hit in the foot is related to horse galloping, but you know, it's just to give you a different sensory effect. There's also soap bubbles that are released periodically into the air to kind of create a joyful atmosphere, puffs of air which also hit you in the face, and of course the soundtrack. It's actually, if you put that all together, it's more than 7, so I'm actually not sure which dimensions are the 7 that they're referring to in 7. Maybe 7 is just a nice number. It's worth noting that these extra three-dimensional effects, while fun and titillating, are not exactly expected, in my opinion, to simulate a sense of heightened realness in the experience. That is, in early sort of like experiments of this type, or you know, alternative sort of cinematic histories that, you know, play with these kinds of extra three-dimensional things. The line is often something like, oh, you know, feel like you're really there. But, you know, releasing soap bubbles into the air doesn't actually make you like feel like you're actually in, you know, Imperial Punjab, like in Maha Punjab, Sikh Empire. So I just think it's interesting that, from my perspective, a lot of these things are meant to be sort of just like purely attractive or titillating effects. They're not necessarily reality enhancing in every instance. Okay, so that's Sher Punjab. Oh yeah, and there's a photo of the movie theater. I love this photo. So you can see these are the chairs that move, and they have handles you can hold on to in case you get scared while the chairs are moving. here is this is just a short excerpt so you can see. This is a part of the Bhangra and Gatka performance that happens, and that's the fort itself all lit up. Just so you can get a little flavor for what it's like. So perhaps the most impressive, though, more impressive than Sher Punjab, the most impressive feature at Gobindgarh Fort is Kandam Boldiane, an intricate work of immersive light and sound with laser lights, animation, and site-specific projection mapping. The park complex is open for about 2 hours after sunset, and the show runs for 22 minutes, allowing for 2 screenings of each Punjabi and English language versions. The work, with animation produced, oh, by the way, so this happens just before the Kandam Boldiane show. So there's this Bhangra Gidda Gatka show, and then as the sun sets, it gets dark enough for the projection on the building to happen, and then the building projection show. The animation production was headed by Indian animation studio Maya Digital Studios, and was produced with collaboration of many different kinds of artists working together. Photographers, projection and stage light specialists, architectural preservationists, the animators, voice actors, and not to mention the input of various Gurdwara representatives and people like bureaucrats who are like people on the tourism board, for example. Told from a first-person perspective, the Whispering Walls tell us the story of Amritsar's founding, the fort's construction in the 1700s by the Bhangi missile, and the seizure and renaming by Maharaja Ranjit Singh as Gobindgarh Fort, all the way to civil unrest in the British Raj and through to 1947 independence. As the fort speaks to the audience in first person, it can be seen in all stages of its own construction and historical appearance, albeit from the limited angle where the audience is seated on the southwest side of the fort on the lawn, as you can see from the previous video clip. So I'm actually just going to show for a moment this YouTube clip so you can get a sense. This is a trailer. So this doesn't have any of the special effects, really. This is made for computer screen.
ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਦਾ ਗਵਾਹ ਮੈਂ ਖੋਲ੍ਹਣ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹਾਂ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਦਾ ਉਹ ਸਫ਼ਾ ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਹੈ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਸਰ।
So you can see, like, throughout this this video, when they show the screen, it's sort of delimited in this shape, and that's because that's the shape of the facade of the building onto which they're projecting. So that's to give you a sort of sense of the visual style of the show. Where am I here? This one? Yeah. Yes. And then also I'll just have you watch for 1 second a sort of crappy video that I took so you can see a little bit what it looks like contextualized. So you can see that they're using the projection to make it appear as if the building is actually moving, crumbling, or being built. So that's not a great video, I apologize about that, but I just wanted to give you a sense of sort of what it looks like when this projection is actually on top of the building. Sorry, 1 second. So at some moments, this is the kind of thing that's highlighted, the actual turning of the building. But at other moments, there are more, more like cinematic, I would say, like cinematic moments. Life-size human figures of soldiers and revolutionaries projected onto the building's surface, always in a 1-to-1 ratio. And then, so it appears as if there were actual, soldiers carrying guns, and people engaging in struggles for power, etc. So depicting scenes from Amritsar, Lahore, and Delhi, images are projected onto the causeway behind the fort's column archway, lofted above its solid, canting, sloping base, architectural features highlighted or alternately hidden by the projection with changing scenes. At other times, audiences are shown the fort under attack in apparent real time, as explosions, always in one-to-one life scale, appear momentarily to mar the structural integrity of the building, as well as its historical grandeur, as the booming voice of the fort tells us of its eventual capture and annexation by the British. There are also moments of greater abstraction, as when the building is disguised by tricks of projection to show dazzling explosions of fireworks, the Indian flag, or to show the map of old pre-partition Punjab. Here, as with Sher-e Punjab, and with Viraste Khalsa, which I don't have time to talk about today, I argue that the display of history, while certainly part of educational, economic, and touristic endeavors, is also necessarily part of a communitarian and individual religious experience building. As Sikh religious thought includes a history of itself in its understanding of devotional activity, as I explained above with Medium Beatty, such development of audiovisual spectacle becomes tantamount to a kind of spiritual participation. It is, of course, notable that there are two threads of nationalism that run through the development and exhibition of distinct quasi-national Punjab, through the development and exhibition of a distinct quasi-national Punjabi identity. On one hand, these exhibits give credence to the idea that Sikhi is uniquely Punjabi and vice versa, while on the other hand, memorializing the unique place of Punjab in the prehistory of Indian independence. The emergence of this narrative, one that is simultaneously quasi-ethno-nationalist with respect to Punjab, while still maintaining the superiority of the broader Indian national, social, and political milieu, helps explain both the cooperation of multiple funding sources for these sites, as well as the excitement for funding a project about Sikh history as Punjabi history within a more political and financial agenda dominated by BJP and Akali Dal alliances at the Punjab state level. What then is the best way to describe the recent proliferation of these kinds of audiovisual heritage museums? A few utilitarian motivations come to mind. Firstly, there's a genuine anxiety among older generations of Sikhs that younger Sikhs are no longer interested or in touch with their religion or culture. These audiovisual museums are brought about by the cooperation of a number of organizations, including Gurdwara committees, and in the view of a mainstream conservative slice of the Sikh community, there is a desire to attract young people to the sights and sounds of religion with splendor, attempting to invoke the sort of sublime Edmund Burke or any Bhakti poet would have been pleased to describe. Secondly, and relatedly, the cooperation of producers introducing this content want to appeal to foreigners and outsiders, as well as to younger Sikhs, to the extent that these are very open spaces designed to teach the fundamentals of Sikh life and thought. Across the multiple museums that I'm looking at, much of the same content is rehashed or restated with varying shades of emphasis. The origin story of Guru Nanak, the transcription, Pehla Prakash of Guru Granth Sahib, episodes in the Sikh tradition of martyrdom, the formation of the Khalsa, the rule of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, etc. The repetition of content across these sites can be viewed as proto-evangelism, or the desire to represent, the desire of the normative to represent and perform a unified whole to the outside group. In closing, I want to gesture what I think is actually a theological impulse hiding in the desire to stun audiences audiovisually, and indicate one point worth meditating on in considering the limitations of audiovisual form. That is, in Sikh contexts, where video, voiceover, or narrative reminds us that the absolute or ultimate reality is formless, then, as the narrator of Sher-e Punjab does, how are we to regard the actual audiovisual form itself? In a 2016 video recorded sermon by Ranjit Singh Tadrianwale, which was uploaded to YouTube, the title of the sermon, the katha, is Guru Ka Darshan Kivein Kariye. Dadrianwale makes the following comment. This is my own translation. Can you understand a teacher just from looking at them? Or do you have to listen to understand? What do you get from looking? A teacher isn't something just to be seen. You have to listen to a teacher, to a guru. In Viraste Khalsa, which I don't have time to talk about right now, one even has the option of moving through all of the galleries without the audio headset, rendering much of the visual material, beautiful but still incomplete. What then can we say to those who go as tourists, who are awed by dazzling projections on the side of buildings, but do not take the headsets or simply choose not to listen? Thank you.